My name is Michelle, and I am an adoptive mom of three. And all three of my girls, at one point or another, have needed residential care, meaning they have needed to stay long term at a facility that is not my home. And so I get asked a lot, um, how do you know? Like, how do you decide? Or, um, what's the process? Or, point of, kind of the point of no return. Like, that's a big decision. And how do you know that it's the right decision? And as with any question that you're asking about a human, for sure, it's always complicated. But I'm going to try to make it as simple as I can. It was different for each of my three girls. Um, our oldest, when we adopted her, she came into our house full time at 15. So she had already been exposed to drugs, to sex. She'd seen a revolving door of men. At her biological's home, she'd been kicked out in the middle of the night. She'd been on the streets. So she had seen a lot and experienced a lot. And for her, I will say in a nutshell, for all three of mine, well, for two of the three for sure, it came down to safety. For our oldest, she just was fight or flight all the time. And it came to the point where self-harm was a real issue. So it started out with erasers at school, where she would take an eraser and she would scratch or rub the skin off of her arm. And then it escalated from there. And it was insightful to talk to her when I could, when she was able to tell me what she was feeling. And this is, for adoptive and foster parents, it's not something that I ever understood or would have known without her explaining to me. And there was a day that she actually said, when you and Dad are consistent in loving me and doing the right thing, it's painful. Like, your love to me is painful. It hurts. I crave it. I want it. I want you to do the right things for me. I want you to love me, but it's painful. And I just asked her, like, what do you mean? And she was caught between wanting to be able to accept our love, but at the same time feeling like she had to, by accepting our love, it meant that she was going to be rejecting her biological parents. And also, the more that she was out of that just dysfunctional, system and life, the more she realized how dysfunctional it was. And it just grieved her heart. Like, it was physically painful to her that her biological parents were not able to provide for her what she needed. So when things would get super overwhelming for her, we had a couple of times where she would lock herself in the bathroom and she would say, I'm going to kill myself. And those were always times that we for sure called and had, it escalated and quickly. So her journey through residential was completely different. She was in and out of 3 or 4 different residential places. That was a different story because she was actually in the foster care system. So we had to work within the residential facilities that were available through the state. And that really is limiting. She had to move several times because we had to wait for beds to be open. So it's very different when you do not have custody of a child and they need residential. That really is up to the team, the state team, and you have to work within those parameters. So safety for her, that was the first one. My other 2 girls are actually 6 days apart, not from the same family, not the same biological family, not even from the same state, and completely different kids, totally different journeys. But for both of them, my husband passed away, and they were 9. And you can imagine that rocked our world. It was and they both handled it completely differently. So the middle daughter, she was 9, and within 2 weeks of my husband passing, and she was very, very close to my husband. She was also high functioning autistic. From the outside looking in, nobody would ever know that she was autistic, but there are definitely some processing difficulties. But she truly lost her identity when her dad died. And again, crazy hard choice. I'm within a week of him passing, she was trying to run away to a neighbor's house where my husband always hung out with his buddies, and we had barbecues and things there down the road. And she was trying to run away to camp out in our friend's yard, because she just knew if she camped out outside the house that she would see Daddy, like Daddy would come out. She wanted to sleep outside because she, I'm going to see him when he comes home. Like she knew enough to know that he really was in heaven, he really was deceased, but she could not process it. Just couldn't. And a lot of acting out. And, the girls being 6 days apart, her sister, she was terrified. She wasn't sleeping at night, and she kept saying to me, Mom, she's going to die. Mom, she's going to die. And it got to the place, my mom lives with me as well, but between my mom and I, we were, 24 hours a day, somebody had to have eyes on her. Because I never thought that she would take her life intentionally, but a lot of her behaviors, because she just couldn't process and wasn't acting rationally, very well could have ended her life, and certainly hurt others at the same time, because her sister was going to run into oncoming traffic to get her out of the road to keep her from running away. And so again, I agonized over that decision. You can imagine the place that I was, grieving the loss of my husband, and it was sudden. It was like within 5 weeks, and so I am trying to process that, and here I am. I'm like, am I just making this decision out of grief? I'm questioning everything, because our whole world has changed. But I was very thankful. We had a counselor that we had been working with for about 6 or 7 months prior to this, and I remember her saying to me, "Okay, Michelle, I'm going to boil it down to you in one question," and this is what I would say to you, those of you having to make this decision. And she said, if she were to hurt herself or someone else, whether it's intentional or whether it's not, could you live with yourself? And I couldn't. And that's what was keeping me up at night, was because I was terrified of exactly that happening. And so that I got off that phone call with the counselor, and I started beating down doors, trying, to find options and to figure out what to do. I will say my third daughter, she did end up going to residential. Her journey was completely different than the other two. So my husband had passed away, and her sister that she's 6 days apart from, and we adopted them at birth. So they were raised like twins, and her sister had been in residential, and we were really struggling, like what our family looked like how do we put us back together. And to be quite honest, she didn't want her sister to come home from residential. At that point, because we were able to sleep at night and there was a peace in our house that we had not had before, she did not want to rock that boat. And again, as a parent, you talk about a crazy, difficult decision to have to make, because I literally felt, like I was being torn in two having to choose between children. And actually and this was, again, just the best for our family situation, was that, so my second daughter, she was at this time in residential in Florida. And so my third daughter went to the same residential, and they spent 3.5 months together at that same residential, living in the same room and eating meals, basically learning how to live together without me being in the middle, without me having to be the constant referee. And it was teaching them how to be a team again. They really had struggled after my husband passed, because all of us grieved in completely different ways. And I'll address that in a different video. But really had to learn how to live together again, and how to give each other grace to be able to be who we were, and to grieve the way that we needed to, and to heal the way that we needed to, and at different paces, and that kind of thing. So it wasn't, for her, it wasn't so much of like acting out behaviors, or that she was putting someone in danger, because hers was not physical. Hers was her mouth. But she was absolutely, totally destructive, ripping her sister apart verbally. That's how she kept control. That's how she defended. That's how she felt like she had to, her whole world was completely out of control. So that's how she chose to keep in control of it, and was like verbally ruthless. We'll just put it that way. And so we had to have just a total, in the middle of, while the two girls were at residential, I didn't have a choice after my husband passed away. We moved within the same city, but I had to sell the house and the property that we had. And so we were able to truly like start over again. There is no really, I don't like the word start over because it's not like you're starting from a clean slate and everything's wiped over again. But I guess I would say we had to have a peaceful place to start from. And that's what it took for us. So that was how we made the decision of when it was time. Finding a good counselor is imperative. And again, I will elaborate more on that in a different video, because not everybody needs that. But that was just so imperative, because the people around you more than likely are not going to understand what's happening inside the four walls of your home. And so having an unbiased, non-judgmental voice of reason that can be outside of the situation, not emotional, and lay it out black and white, is an absolute godsend.